For thousands of years, in a galaxy far, far away, movies have made us laugh, made us cry, made us feel extremely awkward
when watching that sex scene with our parents.
No.
Let's all talk about films with a few guys you could just chill with. If you find a plot hole, they'll fill it right here on BRB Flix. Flix is a podcast for the silver screen. Yoshi rage quits while Jitterbug screams. Dave tries in vain to steer this machine, but the show digresses like it has ADD.
You know, as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to podcast about movies. I can't remember more than 4 years ago, but here we are. We're podcasting about movies. This is Big Red Flix on the BigRedBarel.com. I'm Dave here in Houston, Texas. Jitterbug is in Colorado. Pop the top.
There we go. Howdy, everybody.
And Yoshifett is out in California. Crack the tin.
The amp can. It's already open. We took too long to get started.
We took too long to get started. He leads us on a tangent about Madden. and we took too long.
We watched this movie like 3 weeks ago, something like that.
It's been a while, yeah. Yeah,
well, it's not my fault. Paperwork had to be signed, and dotted I's had to be dotted, T's had to be crossed, douchebags had to be told. Things had to happen.
Yeah.
But you know what? The important thing is, it's finally going to happen.
Yeah, we're here, so, bridge under the water and stuff.
Remember when we were going to do The Princess Bride for Valentine's Day?
I remember when we were going to do Princess Bride for Valentine's Day. That didn't work out.
Nah, that's cray. Nah, but that is a good movie, though. We should talk about that someday.
I'm sure it'll happen. Well, this, ladies and gentlemen, is the first BKR officially of BigRedBarel.com. This is where we like to sit down.
Oh, wait, BKR. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You can keep going. You're right.
Oh, can I do this? Can I do my
Boom.
God, you made me lose my train of thought.
Oh, sorry. I don't know.
So we're going to break down a movie. It's probably going to take a couple of episodes because we kind of... I don't know if it's because we suck at it or if because we're really good. But we can totally make movies last for 2, 3, 4,
8,
sometimes
25 hours.
What Sting is to sex, we are to movie podcasting. We can just keep going all day long.
Oh, yeah. Our tantric podcast.
Tantric podcast. That's what we put out.
We don't even have to touch ourselves anymore. Wait, what?
I remember when I first heard the whole thing about how Sting can have sex for 8 or 9 or hours or however long he has sex.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think that was like when I was 18 or 19, and I remember thinking like, wow, that's something to aspire to. Wow, that would be fantastic. I really want to do that. Now I'm 35, 34, and it's like, oh, that sounds like a nightmare. What are you, Sting? What are you thinking? That does not sound good.
I don't want to do anything except for maybe sleep for that long in a row.
Yeah, I barely want to play video games for 8 hours. Like, whoa, that's nuts. I can't do that.
That is.
I don't have the stamina to sit in a chair for 8 hours straight.
I don't have the blood flow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that... See, I've always thought that there's no way that can mean sex in any sort of way that we think about sex.
That means a lot of cunnilingus. A lot of cunnilingus with a dash of analingus.
Well, and a lot of like weird, just here, let's be here and just stay in that position for the next 30 minutes and, meditate about life or something. I think that's what it's about. I don't think it's about like he pounds away for 8 hours.
I think he's like, oh yeah, let's scissor. Yeah.
Of course, we can bring Sting and South Park into BKR about Goodfellas. I love that we're very good at that sort of thing.
Of course we are.
Here's something totally tangential, but I'm going to say it anyways, is that I hear a lot of people talking about this Hunger Games that's coming out. And happily, what I keep hearing people say is, oh, well, just watch Battle Royale. Because apparently they're very similar in premise, and it makes me happy that people are taking that hipster route. They're going, oh, well, it was cooler when it was Battle Royale.
What's even better is the fact that the author who wrote the books a few years ago says, oh, I've never heard of Battle Royale. It's like, really? it's a book and a movie, and you've never heard anything about it.
That's like the guy from Owl City saying he's never heard of Postal Service. Like, oh, shut up! You've got to be kidding me. That you made the same song that Postal Service makes. You did not. You've heard of them. Just stop that. You sing the same voice. You use the same crappy lyrics. Just stop it.
And even if she hadn't heard of it, somebody in her circle could have been like, oh, that sounds like that movie Battle Royale.
Yeah, I from what I understand, I haven't read the books, but I understand that it's kind of like Battle Royale meets Harry Potter in a way. It's Battle Royale for the Harry Potter crowd in a certain respect.
So they're going to be like witchcraft and stuff.
Yeah, I'm reading through the first book, and it's more like it's more like The Running Man than it is a Battle Royale. Like, yes, there's kids in it that have to do it, but it's for a show. Like, that's what it really is. Like, there's this big, huge deal that's made out of it, all this ceremony and crap like that.
The hype, yeah.
So, I mean, that's what it is. It still has the whole totalitarianism and good times like that.
The Orwellian overtones, as we like to say in the pretentious world of English teachers.
It's very Kafkaesque.
Hey, you remembered a quote from The Squid and the Whale. That makes me so happy. That was a complete failure of a suggestion. We should do a double billing. Roadhouse, Squid and the Whale. We'll watch those two movies. Those are the two most important films of the 20th century.
There we go. Roadhouse. All right, well, we're going to do Goodfellas, which means we need to be synopsized.
How do we want to do this? Do you want to do it like a New Yorker?
Can you do it, New Yorker? I mean, I know they're not in New York, but can you do New York?
What do you mean they're not in New York?
Are they not in New York?
What? Yes,
What?
they are.
What are you, a wise guy?
I've only seen the movie once, so I'm just gonna... I thought they were in, where were they?
Where's Lufthansa?
I thought they was in Jersey.
Well, the movie starts out in Brooklyn, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't he live
Quit.
in... I think I remember that's like the
As
first...
far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a gangster. Henry Hill, Brooklyn, New York, 1955. What the
Fun. I can't read.
That's good. Hey, that's good to know. I never learned to read.
So what's this movie about, Jitterbug?
This movie is a casting call for any gangster movie made after this.
No kidding. That was a big, as awful as it was that I'd never seen this movie before, is much of a travesty that someone on a movie podcast had not seen Goodfellas. That was the great thing, is they're all familiar faces. Because I've seen them all do other gangster movies. I'm like, hey, there's that guy, and then that guy,
And The Sopranos.
Yeah, and then I see Paul Sorvino. I'm like, yeah, all right, okay, it's Juliet's dad.
Really? That's where you went with that?
That's where I thought. Yeah, I watch that movie every fucking year with my class, so it's in the front of my mind. When I think of Paul Sorvino, I think of Juliet's dad. Yep, sadly for him.
Oh, hand me my broadsword.
Yeah, and it's a fucking gun. What a genius Baz Luhrmann is.
Are we gonna keep moving?
Yeah.
Can we do this?
Yeah, well, you're the one who slowed it down. I'm just saying.
Henry Hill is a small-time gangster who takes part in a robbery with Jimmy Conway and Tommy DeVito, two other gangsters who have their sights set a bit higher. His two partners kill off everyone else involved in the robbery and slowly start to climb up through the hierarchy of the mob. Henry, however, is badly affected by his partner's success, but he will stoop low enough to bring about the downfall of Jimmy and Tommy. Will he? I don't know. Maybe. Let's see what happens. I'm slipping into walking.
I was gonna say, this is getting wild.
Let's see what happens in this here movie.
I was supposed to play the part of Paulie, but they said, Chris, you like to talk. Paulie don't talk.
Yeah, but he says so much without saying anything. Paul Sorvino acts so much with his face,
Could you imagine Walken playing Pesci's character, though? What do you mean I'm funny?
He would be awesome.
How am I funny?
No, actually, Joe Pesci really when I told one of my coworkers, I'm gonna watch Goodfellas for the first time. After he was done beating me with the stick, he was like, "Hey, this is really Pesci's best movie. Like, you're gonna love Pesci in this movie. This is the part that he was born to play. Like." He gets cheesy, etc., but this is what you want to see him in. This is his thing. And I couldn't agree more. Like, I've never been more enthralled with the Pesci performance. Not even My Cousin Vinny can withstand this performance.
I don't know, man. What do you know about these two Utes?
I know they're not as interesting as De Niro and Pesci as two Utes.
Pesci definitely got... I would say he got typecasted into this particular type of character. When you're talking about this, Casino, My Cousin Vinny, and, he's just always expected to do this kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. But this is like, it feels authentic, and probably because it was like the first thing I'm assuming that he did in this realm. But the thing that I've mentioned to a lot of people about this movie is that we all know somebody like his character, but most of them don't have the kind of power, quote unquote, that he has.
You mean they don't have guns?
Well, yeah, they don't just f***ing shoot whoever they want and then pay off the police, etc. But people in your personal life who are like him, who can just dish it out nonstop. You say one thing, and then it's like, oh crap, that person is going to go off on me. But in this case, that means he might just shoot you. I love how they take a personality archetype that we know. We've all worked with people or have been kind of friends with someone like Pesci's character, and yet none of them they've all been kind of impotent, so to speak. They can't really do anything about this chip on their shoulder that they have, and Pesci can do so much about it that it's that's what makes a lot of this discomforting for me to watch. Is I'm like, dude, I know people like that. If they were given a gun, that's what they would do. If they were given that kind of power. No one man
should have all that power.
I knew we were going there. Yeah, maybe Kanye West could be a guy like this. I don't know. No, I'm not going to hate on Kanye because
he just steals microphones.
Hating is bad, so I learned things. But no, Pesci in this movie he's this character that, you do hate him. I mean, I hate him anyways. But you have to admire how he plays it so, like, believably and to the teeth. It's like there's no holding back with any of the characters really in the movie. They know what they are, and it's probably the result of a good script and a good director. But it feels like the characters know who they are and they do their thing, and it's like, if you're supposed to hate them, you do. If you're supposed to relate to them, no matter how vile they are, like Henry Hill, you relate to them. So it's a testament to the author and to Scorsese, I think, really.
Yeah. One thing about his portrayal here is that the actual person doesn't look anything like him, like Joe Pesci. He's actually a tall, muscular guy. But from what Henry Hill has said is that this portrayal of him is absolutely dead on, completely dead on. So,
well, it seems kind of more menacing because Joe Pesci's not a big guy, so that's what makes it really scary. Is that this guy with sort of a Napoleonic,
the little complex man complex.
It's like, oh, you're talking.
You die. That's just how it goes.
Shall we get into the movie?
Absolutely.
Into the story?
Yeah, let's do this.
Into the nitty-gritty. All right. It starts out with a scene driving down the highway. 3 guys just out for a stroll. And there's... What the hell is that?
Well, what are you talking about?
This is one of the greatest openings of a movie ever. Period. I won't take anybody saying otherwise. It's one of the best openings of a movie. It's just like when somebody's doing a story, or you start any kind of a story, you want to start with something that just pulls you in immediately. And a lot of times, good Lord, how many times have we talked about how movies start at the wrong places, or they do some sort of stupid scrawl, or whatever it is, that they don't know how to start a movie. This one, it does it as if it's trying to get you into a long endeavor, but which movies don't usually worry about, because you're already there, you're going to sit down, you're going to give it 10 minutes, so they don't worry about the first couple minutes. This movie hooks you the second it starts. Within 2 minutes of this movie starting, you're just like, okay, well, I'm in completely. Holy cow. I can't wait to watch the rest of this movie.
Yeah, think about the opposite of what they could have done. They could have just started with him as a little kid, not a little kid, but a teenager. And how much more involving is this scene? I mean, obviously the immediate over the top violence, is excellent in terms of getting you caught up and just in there. I don't know, it's a very difficult thing for me to quantify, but it just felt like after this first scene, I was like, all right, yep, nope, people are right. This movie is really good. I know it's going to be good. it sold me so quickly, and I'm not exactly sure. I can't place my finger on why that is. I mean, like, it's one of those scenes that you're watching, and even though I've never seen the movie before, I felt like it was iconic already. Like, even though I'd never seen it, I was like, oh, this is going to be something that I'll remember. Like, it's weird. It must have been how people felt the first time seeing, the Star Destroyer coming over after the Tantive 4 in episode 4, seeing that Star Destroyer come over.
I'm going to get a little, alarm that I hit every time you bring Star Wars into a movie where Star Wars can't apply. No. You can't bring Star Wars into
No, I made an analogy there. It's a memorable scene, and so is that. There you go. It is,
because it starts out letting you know that these guys are, well, they're bad.
It does, but here's the amazing thing about it. Just about everybody that I talk to about this movie agrees that in the first 20 minutes of the movie, you're drawn in and you like these people. And it's so bizarre that they start out with this vicious murder, yet almost everyone who watches this 20 minutes in will be like, yeah, these guys are, I like these people. I want to be in and be a part of this world.
Well, they make them so likable, and they also make it seem like the most irresistible lifestyle ever. It's you get to do what you want. Here's this kid who can, he gets to park people's expensive cars, and they pay him money to do it, and he's like running around doing big boy stuff for all these people, and he gets all of this kickback for it, and he has all of this sway, even though he's not that old. It's just like, you have to ask yourself, who would turn this down, especially when they give you those little scenes of his dad beating him and stuff. You're like, well, of course he's going to go gravitate towards this adoptive family that treats him like a star, basically, like a rising star, which is what he becomes in the film, obviously. But it's like, yeah, how can you not want to be like these guys watching this part? And
he does a really good part of the best word I can come up with is romanticizing. Like the gangster lifestyle,
totally.
Even if though it's just the lower level stuff, none of these guys are. Oh yeah, I work in sanitation. No, there's none of that. But it just makes it seem all cool because, for the most part, there's like one person that gets shot and they don't even show if he dies, and it seems like he got shot by somebody else. But for the most part, it's all good, fun. Nobody's getting hurt.
It's just people protecting each other, looking out for their interests.
Yeah, they're like the cops. If the cops can't protect them, they go to Paulie.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, it does. Yeah, romanticizing, I think, is a really good word for it, because they do make it seem like how could I possibly think that this is something that I could turn down? Like maybe that just means I'm a morally shady person, but looking at what they're doing, you're just like, this looks fun. This looks great. Like, why wouldn't I want to be involved in this?
Well, and yeah, they do such a great job of not only romanticizing the lifestyle and making you think like, I could forget the bad stuff, but when you look at it from Henry Hill's viewpoint as a kid, why wouldn't you want to go that way? They talk about him, well, these are the guys that have all the money, they wear the nice suits, and my dad's the work stiff that, blue collar guy that has to go to work, and why would I choose that lifestyle? I make more in a week with these guys than my dad makes in a month. And it's, when you look at it, when
totally.
This movie takes you and it puts you in Henry Hill's head as a kid growing up, it does something to the average viewer to where you just completely accept this anti-hero. And Henry Hill is probably the greatest anti-hero in film, in my opinion. This movie is such a great example of how a movie can make you care about a despicable person. And by the end of it...
What about Anakin Skywalker?
Oh, come on.
Sorry, I had to do it again. Where's your bell?
You know what it's going to be? It's just going to be me opening another beer. Oh.
Oh, no, you're going to be wasted way too quick then.
No, he's just going to waste a lot of beer. He's going to have a lot of warm beer sitting on around him.
Good point. If he just opens them and doesn't do anything with them.
But I love this movie. Obviously, I don't even need to tell people how much I love this movie. I talk about it enough. It's a fantastic movie, and what a great example of how to start a movie with this horrific scene that draws you immediately in, and then goes into the character's head and shows you his life as a child and growing up. And by the time you get back into the violence, you've completely forgotten that first scene. It's like, I'm not even there anymore. I'm just with Henry Hill, and I'm going with him into this world, and it's exciting and entertaining, and, well, we'll get to all of that stuff, but holy cow. Everything, I don't know if there's much in this movie that I don't like. I don't think I can come up with anything. So we'll see. Maybe I can't. But
There was my little like overarching complaint about it, which is not even a real complaint because it's really just up to what you think of the aging process. But there were some scenes where I felt like, wait, hold on a second, De Niro's supposed to be 28 in this scene or something, and I was like, he doesn't look that age. Like the ages felt inconsistent in the aging process, but dude, that is totally nitpicking, and I would never like hold that against the film, but that is one thing that I noticed, that they're not 100% consistent in the portrayal of characters and their ages. But I really don't care about that because it was just like a vague thing that I noticed, but I was like, I really can let this movie slide on this super nitpicky thing that a lot of people say, well, no, you're wrong. These people look their right ages. And I go, okay, well, I'll give that to you because that's true. It's kind of a subjective thing. So that's the. Besides that, I was just like, the whole time I'm watching this movie going, wow, why don't we watch more movies like this and talk about them? Because this is awesome.
Well, we can't only talk about the great movies.
We can.
Well, we could. I mean, there's a rather long list of the greatest movies of all time to watch.
Right, we could go through them, but yeah, it's kind
without the blood rains, it doesn't make these movies worth it.
I actually think that's good.
I'll say this about Goodfellas is when I say that I don't know that I can come up with a fault in this, that in its own, that sentence doesn't sound that spectacular. But when you know me, and you've listened to this show... Yeah,
when you know this anal retentive douchebag
that
here...
I absolutely adore, and it's like, yeah, I can find stuff that's wrong with them. I don't know that I can find anything wrong with this movie. This is way up on my favorite movies of all time list. I can't find a fault here. It's perfect.
I actually have one scene that I'll bring up later because it's near the end of the film that I thought, I wonder what Jitterbug thinks about this, because it's where I'll just leave it till then. But it made me think, I wonder if this is the one spot where maybe Jitterbug has something to say about it that's not 100% positive. But we'll get there. Let's just save that as a cool little surprise or something,
for shizzle,
or a boring surprise. I don't know.
So we see a montage, if you will, of Henry sort of becoming the wise guy.
Yeah,
working his way up through the ranks, doing all these.
That's not really a montage. I mean, it's they explore his childhood.
It's a series of clips of him doing.
And again, there's
to make him wise guy.
This is one thing that I mentioned off air before we started recording. I think it was last week that we have somebody narrating here. We have the dreaded voiceover, and yet it never feels intrusive, out of place. It only feels like it's adding to what's going on. It's we've complained about voiceovers on this show before, but this is definitely an exception, and it's such a strong exception. It's like if you want to make a case for voiceovers, this movie makes that case for you.
Well, I think we've also said, though...
Well, of course it does, because, this could be Henry sitting and, spilling his guts to the DA a U.S. attorney or whoever it is he's talking to.
There's context there that helps it, but also the way that it's done artistically, the delivery by Liotta, and the way that the lines come in at certain times in the movie, like at the right times, and it doesn't feel overbearing, and it doesn't feel overly, a lot of times voiceovers are very overly dramatic, or they're or they're super dry, and he's right in the middle. He's like perfect for it, and so
It sounds to me like he's sitting there smoking a cigarette while he reads.
Yeah.
Like he's not in a booth standing, like he's just sitting there,
Yeah, it has legitimacy. Yeah, totally.
Well, the one thing that we said too when we were talking about voiceovers being a problem in movies, we did say that the exception to that rule is historical documentaries or biographies. Those are the two things that it's okay in those. And this, while it's incredibly cinematic, and this is more of a movie than it is a documentary or a historical documentary or anything like that, it still does fall in the category of a biography. It makes sense that they would use this. I would argue, though, that Scorsese uses it here not for that effect, and he doesn't use it to fill in information gaps. He doesn't use it much for that. There's a couple scenes where he does.
No, he mainly shows you things he wants you to know, which is great.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like a double whammy, if you will. It's like, he might be giving you some information like names and stuff like that, because instead of just having, a bunch of guys sit in a room, hey, Paulie, hey, Joe, he doesn't have that. It's like, this is Paulie, and Paulie does this. But then also on the screen, you're seeing these really powerful performances, especially from like Paul Sorvino, walking around being all badass. Like the scene where he's sitting there just eating a hot dog or sausage or whatever it is. And they're like, Paulie doesn't really say much to anybody. He talks to like 6 people. And, he doesn't say or do anything. He's mostly just nodding and whispering, but he looks all badass while he's just sitting there eating this hot dog.
But the reason that Scorsese uses it here, while he does do a couple info dumps here and there, but the info dumps don't affect the story all that much, the reason that he does it is clearly to draw you into Henry Hill's character. And I think it's a big reason is because this is a despicable person. It's an anti-hero. And in order to make you care about the quote-unquote protagonist of this movie, you have to be drawn into his head. You have to understand his mindset, why he got into this life, how he feels about it. And that's why he uses the voiceover here. And it's to tremendous effect. This is the movie that you can use as the example of it being done right.
Fully agree.
All right. So during these montages, we see Ray doing his odd jobs. And then there's one scene. My dad got angry because his parents didn't like him into life, if you will. And you see his dad beating the crap out of him because he got a letter from school saying that he hadn't been at school in months. So then him and his wise guy buddies go find the post guy. Hey, it's that guy right there. And they beat the shit out of him and say, he don't get no more letters from the school at his place.
Did you guys watch it with the commentary from Henry Hill and the FBI agent?
No, I didn't get around to it.
I did, but it was like a while back.
They talk about this scene in there about how the funniest thing about that whole thing, I recommend it to anybody. Definitely, if you like this movie, watch it with that audio commentary on.
It's going to happen. I just haven't done it yet.
At the first maybe 20 minutes of it, Henry Hill sounds really uncomfortable, and he's giving you a lot of you knows, and it's really annoying. But once you get past that, you get to some really great stuff. I highly recommend it. But they talk about this scene in particular and explain that this really happened. And the funny thing that keeps happening throughout it with Henry Hill is he'll say, I remember when that happened. Crazy times. And it's just like, oh my God, this really happened. Like, they really did this.
Yeah.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Just so good. Some of these scenes, this movie, a lot of it probably falls into that category of if it wasn't true, it would be too hard to believe. And this is one of those scenes where really they got the mailman and beat the living crap out of him to get him to stop taking letters. That's great. Love it. That's hilarious.
My students would love that scene, by the way. It's just totally up their alley.
Do they mail things from schools still?
No, actually they don't.
Don't they fire off emails in this age of information?
Oh, no, they don't do that. We hand them out to the students because since the budgets are cut so tightly now, we can't afford the postage to send them out to all the parents, so we send them we give them to the kids have to take them home and get them signed or some crap, so
I gotcha.
Which they just forged that, whatever, doesn't matter. Not part of this movie, so
nice.
And not related to Star Wars, so I don't want to talk about it.
All right. And then we meet Jimmy, played by Robert De Niro. He spends his money like water. He gives everybody money. Hey, you held the door open for me. Here's some money.
Lots of money, too. Not just a little bit of money. Like, holy crap money.
He's apparently good at killing people. If someone needs to be whacked, he's who you call. And he likes to steal. And some of it, he likes to Robin Hood. Hey, here, have some free cigarettes.
Right. And, the whole thing, De Niro, for me, I think this is different than for people maybe seeing it the first time or whatever, or, that saw it originally in the theaters and maybe didn't know much about De Niro, but De Niro has such a long history now of being this guy, that when I'm watching it, it's almost like it's cliche, or it's like he's a parody of himself, but he's just such the signifier of that, badass mobster who will kill people, doesn't matter, he doesn't even think about it, doesn't worry, whatever, that kind of guy. And so when I watch him, I'm just like, yep, this is the guy. Who else would they get to play this part but De Niro? This is De Niro. This is his movie persona, so to speak.
Apparently, De Niro contacted Henry Hill on a daily basis during the filming of this in order to talk to him about what was Jimmy really like? How did he hold a cigarette? How did he adjust his glasses? Can you explain his mannerisms? He was always on the phone with the real Henry Hill talking to him about that kind of stuff. So this, from Henry Hill's perspective, he, again, just like Joe Pesci nailed Tommy's character, apparently Jimmy Conway is absolutely channeled into De Niro here.
All right, so next, Henry gets busted for selling cigarettes out of a car.
Yeah, this is after he meets Tommy for the first time, too, which the kid they got to play young Joe Pesci Good Lord, yeah.
Looks exactly like him. I was like, oh my gosh, there's Joe Pesci. He's a little kid. Holy crap, this is amazing.
Both of them. The Henry Hill character, too. He looks just like Ray Liotta. Really good casting on those two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they did a good job. Plus, actually, the young Henry Hill, though he doesn't have a lot of lines or anything like that, is part of what makes him likable. Like, he's like this fresh-faced young kid, who's like, looks like a go-getter, looks like somebody who's be fun to hang out with or whatever. Like, that's part of the charm, too. You're in his head as he's narrating and all that, and then you're following this kid along his ascent, and you're in, like you're hooked. And so when it switches over to being Ray Liotta, you're just kind of already there. You already are rooting for this guy. And the scene when he gets let out of the prison, and it's like a big birthday party basically.
Yeah, hey, you got your cherry pop.
It's just, again, like, how do you watch this scene and not feel like this is so awesome? Like, I mean, I'm a total square. I'm a teacher, for God's sakes. And I'm sitting here watching this going, oh, yeah, that's cool. You go to prison, and then they have a party for you because you got finally...
He didn't go to prison. He had a trial, and then he beat the rap because, they paid for the judge.
It's like your first time of getting in trouble this way. And I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome.
Well, it really ties into the psychology of being a kid. And think about whenever you did have something that your parents really applauded you for. And you come home, and it's like, congratulations, that's awesome. Good job on that. It makes you want to do that more. And so, where is he getting that validation? It's from the mobsters. So, yeah, that's awesome. They have practically throw me a party when I get out after getting in trouble. This is great. I love these guys. You always hear with mobster movies that you've got two different families. You've got your regular family, and then you've got the mob. And that sort of cliche phrase gets thrown out there a lot, but we all have our groups of friends, and you think about work friends or something like that, but you've got people that are important to you that are outside of your own family, and that's one thing that the mob, in the old days at least, I don't know how it is today, but it was a big part of that. We're not only with the whole Italian thing, which they touch on a lot in this movie, but just having a group of people around you that you fight with, that will protect you, that you live for. You can't build stronger bonds than that. You talk about like war movies, and you get this bond with your war buddies, and these people are on the streets killing other people. They got to worry about the guy next to them protecting them, and so yeah, you're going to have these really strong bonds, and the movie does a great job of touching on that and explaining how they are this family.
Mm-hmm. And then, bam, 1963, and now Ray Liotta has assumed the role of Henry Hill. No longer a babe, but now he's a flashy dresser. Him and Joe Pesci hanging out. And now, stealing trucks, which is what these wise guys do, has become a science. They just sort of, hey, we got a truck for you to steal. Okay, go park in this diner over here and go buy a cookie, and we'll steal it while you're inside. Just leave the keys in it too, please.
Yeah, I know. I love how they've like turned it into a thing where we can actually eliminate a lot of the violence, and that maybe that's part of the reason why you can relate a little bit to these characters, because aside from Joe Pesci, the other characters seem to kind of want to do this in a clean manner, so to speak. Like, they don't want to have any problems. And so if they can, pay people off to do something rather than shooting them, they'll do it, Like, they'll figure out the way to do it where it's not going to be a big deal. But Pesci, since his character is just so explosive, he doesn't think about stuff like this as much. But you see in all these sorts of scenes that talk about the way they set this up is that these guys are not, it doesn't seem like the violence is their first resort, like it's like the resort that they go to when the other things aren't working. And I think that's part of what humanizes them too, is that they are despicable killers, they will kill, but that's not their first choice.
That's an absolute deliberate job of Martin Scorsese in this movie, and clearly he knows a lot better how to make a movie than I do, because in my opinion, with this film, it was important to get you to like Henry Hill, so you've got to keep the violence from happening until a certain point, until the viewer gets a chance to really fall in love with him. Yeah. And what Martin Scorsese did here was he accomplished that while still introducing the movie in that first couple minutes with a vicious stabbing of a person in Henry Hill's trunk. So
but he didn't stab him. He didn't stab him, and he didn't shoot him.
Even still, though, I mean, come on, that's an incredibly vicious scene.
And I would say it kind of half made it seem like he didn't really know what was going on at that point. In the first scene, because he's like, "What the hell is that?"
It makes it seem like, it does make him seem like vaguely naive of the whole thing. Although that's not really true. We find out later. But in that first scene, you definitely feel like he's not the one who's the bloodthirsty guy. Like, you're thinking, wow, how'd this guy get involved in this, And then the backstory shows you that. So when, like, Pesci's character's just sitting there, die, you fucker, whatever you're saying, and he's stabbing him, you're like, this guy's a psycho. But Henry Hill's character does look kind of befuddled by the whole situation, which allows you to kind of then project later on as you're watching the movie, well, maybe he doesn't, maybe he's not as far involved, and maybe I can kind of let him off the hook a little bit because he's not a cold-blooded killer like the other guys.
Well, I think it's an absolute deliberate move on this movie's part to not introduce the viewer to any sort of violence that Henry Hill is directly associated with until you get a chance to really fall in love with him and be in his head and be with him completely. And we'll get to the scene where that all changes in a minute. But what a masterfully done movie here for him to be able to accomplish that, because I think the majority of people would go into this thinking, I can't relate to a mobster. That's really tough to do. So, but in this movie, you completely do. You're 100% in Henry Hill's mind here.
And next we go to a restaurant or a bar. It's a restaurant bar. I don't know. And it's time to meet all the wise guys. All the A's and O and A, I handled that thing and stuff like that.
Is this where they go around? They have the different like nicknames for everyone.
Yeah,
like,
Tommy No Nos.
Tommy the No. Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, this is like, if again, it's since this is part of our collective consciousness now. Even though I haven't seen this movie, I feel like this sort of thing has been done in lots of mobster movies, gangster movies, where you're going around and identifying people by all their nicknames, and I'm sure they parodied it on The Simpsons and everything. But when you're watching it here, again, to Scorsese's credit, it feels like fresh and important and funny and interesting and everything, all those good things, And
this guy is Johnny 2 times because he says everything 2 times.
Yeah, and then they show him quickly saying something 2 times, nothing over the top, but just there it is, 2 times. So it's good. This
is one of several shots in the movie that the bigger one is coming later at the cabana, but that where there's no cut.
It's one long shot.
Yeah, it's one long shot here where it goes through the bar, and the reason that they do that in movies, and Scorsese is the one that perfected it, is to make the viewer feel as if they're the ones walking in there and encountering it. So
meeting everyone, feeling important.
Yeah, well, it comes into more play with the cabana, but here you're coming in and you're seeing, I believe it's the first time in the movie to where you see him using that technique and walking in and everybody is saying hello to him and you're getting introduced. And you can point out a lot of instances in this take where you would say, if it were a cut take, you'd say, well, let's use a different one because somebody looks directly at the camera or somebody, is having trouble with their line. There's several things there that work like that. But because it's one long shot, it just feels much more natural. You're much more forgiving of it because it's like, well, people make those sorts of mistakes sometimes when when it's real life, and it works.
Yeah, and there's no conversation because it's just people saying, hey, I handled that thing. Hey, I haven't had a chance to talk to that guy yet.
A couple clumsy line hits, where somebody hits their line a little bit too on the nose, looking at the camera, and there's a couple things like that aren't perfect, but it certainly doesn't bother you.
Oh, that's part of the charm, though. I think really, like that's like you were saying, how it can be a little mistaken. It's fine, and if some people are hitting the mark and some people aren't, it just makes it feel more natural. And I think to further what you're saying, one of the things about movies is when you feel immersed in a film and you're completely kind of unaware of the world around you, I think that's one of the things that makes great movies great, is when you just kind of forget you're watching a movie, you're in the character's shoes, and by not having any cuts are so unnatural. There aren't cuts in our life. We don't have, cut to this scene or whatever. It's like, no, that's not how it happens. It feels very natural, and it never reminds you that you're watching a movie, which is a great thing. Like, movies that are really good do a good job of making you feel like I'm not watching a movie. This is just the thing that I'm part of right now, and you're part of the experience. And this is one of those movies where I felt like, wow, I feel like I'm part of this, and I'm not thinking, oh, I'm watching a movie. It's like I had to, stop and think like, oh, I need to remember this part because, we're going to talk about it later, because I was so engrossed in it. So, and I think that, we praise Scorsese a lot already, but that's what this podcast is going to be, because this is a masterwork, like you look at this and you're like, okay, this is how you make a really good movie. Like, it doesn't even matter what the subject matter is. The way that he handles the, I don't want to sound pretentious, but the way that he handles cinematography and the way they shoot the scenes and everything is just perfect. Like, it really does feel like it's unimpeachable. Like, I don't know what to say about it. That like, oh no, that was stupid. Like, that never happened in this movie. Never thought, oh, that's stupid, and it took me out of the movie. I just kept thinking, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's what's happening to Henry now. Oh, that it just never dawned on me. So, again, just tribute to Scorsese.
This is probably
here.
as good a place as any to mention that the one thing that a lot of directors and people in the industry have a problem with Scorsese about is that he'll choose scenes that don't match up to the scene before because he likes the performance. So if you get really nitpicky, you can find instances in the movie where for instance, there's someone like with Paul Sorvino, to where in one scene he'll be sitting there talking to Henry Hill, and then it'll switch to Henry Hill's viewpoint, and Sorvino will have his cigar down, or he'll have his collar down, or something like that, to where it's like
jump cuts,
right?
Or continuity errors is what it's called.
He's perfectly aware that they exist, but he cares more about the actor's performance than things around it. And it's an interesting dilemma that comes up with film a lot, because most directors really, really, really pay attention to that and get upset when things happen, and Scorsese just doesn't care. All he cares about is the performance.
And I would say that on that note, people remember performances more than they point out continuity errors. Like, you can go on, I was noticing this on the Goodfellas thing, that you can go on, look at all these continuity errors where this glass was a little more full than that glass, but how many people actually watch movies like that?
Right.
Who don't have, autism or something, and they're just checking every little thing. It's like, nobody does that. Like, you watch it and you get an overall feel for it. You may notice if it's super duper glaring, or if you've seen the movie 85 times, but little continuity errors like that usually don't bother the average viewer, because if you're into the scene, you're not like sitting there going, oh, because you don't expect it to be there. Because again, if you feel like you're in the movie and you're not watching a movie, you're not going to be like, oh, because that doesn't happen in real life. They're not continuity errors in real life. So if you already feel like it's real life, you kind of are more forgiving, because you're not even looking for them. Like, if Sorvino's cigar's in a different place, like, you don't even think that would be something that would happen, because you're watching something that's really happening. Well, I'm fully aware it's a movie, but while you're watching it, you don't feel that way. I didn't anyways. I wasn't like, oh, oh, look, that's not supposed to be the way it is. I was too interested in what they were saying and what they were doing to care about little things like whether his shirt was buttoned to this button or that button,
It's an interesting...
You see what I'm saying? Like, it's more valuable to have the characters than to have the continuity. Yeah. In my opinion.
I agree with you. It's an interesting point, though, that if you're talking about a movie that's not great, it bugs the living shit out of me. So, like, if you're watching a Uwe Boll movie,
Phantom Menace,
and somebody puts a gun in their right holster, and then the next scene they're pulling it out of a left holster with their left hand, that shit's going to drive me nuts. It's like, why would you do that? But with this, it's just, why would you complain about that? There's no reason to complain about that. But I think it's one of those issues to where if the movie you're watching is crappy, then you start to pick up on just everything, and every little thing starts to bug the crap out of you.
Well, because you get bored and you want to find something to do. Like, that's part of the reason why you notice this shit in movies like the Blood Rain movies, is because you're getting bored. You don't care about the characters. You don't care about the dialogue. You're not sucked in at all. So you're just kind of watching it as a, literally as this like piece of art, using that term very loosely if we're talking about Uwe Boll movies, but you're looking at this as an object, as an artifact of a time period when it was made. Whereas when you're watching a movie like this, you're watching a movie, it's both escapist and intellectual at the same time. Like, you've escaped into this world and you're trying to figure out, like, in your own mind, like, how do you justify these things that are going on? Like, the emotions you're feeling towards the characters and the situations you're in. So it's not like I'm saying it's escapist in the sense that, like, people talk about Michael Bay movies being escapist. I'm saying it's escapist in the sense that it sucks you in so thoroughly that you're not really looking at these little details and caring so much because you're worried about the big overarching story and about the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. I think it might be an odd comparison, but I think it rings true, is music. When you're talking about, there's certain bands that I'm one of those people that will listen to music and I don't really care that much what the words say. I'll go 20 years listening to a song that I love and then somebody points out that the words don't make sense. I'm like, okay, whatever.
What do you mean that Jimi Hendrix isn't saying, "Excuse me while I kiss this guy"? What are you talking about?
And there are some people that the words mean everything. I think it's a little bit more literal with music than it is with movies, and this, what we're particularly talking about. But it's kind of the same, to where some people really get messed up about the lyrics and songs, and even if the song is great, if the lyrics don't work for them, they can't listen to the song. And maybe that's the same sort of mindset that.
Well, I think that I agree. I think that when you talk about music and lyrics, you're talking about, because a song can be amazing and great because music touches you in a way that it's not completely intellectual. You know, you can intellectualize music if you want, but those people are. Those are people who are like, oh, well, that's the same chord progression as it's in this other song, so I don't like it. You're like, shut up. It doesn't matter. If it's fun and you enjoy it, then it's a good song. But I do listen to lyrics very carefully, and sometimes I can hate lyrics so badly that it deters me from enjoying the song. But for the most part, it's the other way around. If I like a song and I can see that the lyrics are not very good, I can justify that. I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter because they fit with the music, so I don't care that they're corny or whatever, it might be. But if the like, a perfect example, it's funny because I already referenced this band, but Owl City, they have this terrible song, Fireflies, I'm sure everybody's aware of. And the song sucks. And so the fact that the song sucks, it sucks more because the lyrics are so retarded. It's like just beyond. So like, if there was a good song, well, I don't even know. It'd have to be a fucking awesome song to overcome these lyrics. But like, that's the thing, is you may not even notice the lyrics, like you said, for 20 years or whatever. And then there are songs where honestly I like them more because of the lyrics. Yeah. But this all comes back to personal preference, because I'm the sort of person who predictably cares a lot about lyrics. I pay big time attention to them. And like, if I really like a song and then I start thinking that the lyrics are not that great, it bugs me, and I try to figure out how I'm going to justify saying, no, this is still a good song even though these lyrics are very bland or cliched or whatever, so I guess that these are kind of similar concepts, but I think music is so visceral. Yeah. And that's what I was saying, a good movie is visceral too. You feel like you're there, so it's the same. We're really talking about the same concepts here.
Exactly.
Yes, but believe it or not, despite the last 5 minutes of this podcast, we do talk about movies. Not indeed music, but
if you want to talk about
Pink Floyd, episode.
I'll go on and on about the lyrics of Pink Floyd.
Jitterbug, shut up. I'm trying to wrap up this episode.
Pink Floyd's like my favorite band of all time. Lyrics, one of my favorite things. My favorite song from them ever, the Great Gig in the Sky, which has no lyrics at all except for a woman screaming. So, there you have it.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode 2. While we're talking about the Goodfellas, we'll be back in a couple of days with episode 3.
You and your ears are quite welcome for the podcasting goodness that you just heard. Why not roll on over to BigRedBarel.com for more podcast, news, reviews, and videos from the biggest, reddest site on the internet, BigRedBarel.com.